Hello, everybody. We'll give a minute or two for folks to log on. Okay, while people continue to stream in, I'd like to run through some quick pieces of housekeeping. I'm Abby Harvey. I'm the Communications Director here at the Blue Green Alliance. First, this event is being recorded. That recording will be sent around later today to all registrants. We will also be sending along links to the two resources that we're releasing. Those will also be shared in the chat as the event continues. Finally, there will be time for questions at the end of the event. You can ask questions using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We'll be compiling those questions throughout the event, so feel free to drop them in as you think of them. There's no need to hold them until the end. And with that, I will turn you over to Blue Green Alliance Executive Director, Jason Walsh.
Hello, folks. For those of you who don't know, BGA is a national coalition of environmental organizations and labor unions. The core principle that keeps our partners together is a bedrock belief that we shouldn't have to choose between good jobs and a clean environment, that we can and must have both. We want to welcome you to this webinar. And I particularly want to welcome our speakers, Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur of Ohio, and our labor partners, Roy Hausman from the United Steelworkers and David Green from the United Auto Workers. We are here because the Trump administration and a GOP-led Congress have spent the last year systematically tearing down the progress we made in previous years to put our country in pole position as a global leader in advanced and clean tech manufacturing. Today, BGA is releasing two new resources for tracking and understanding funding cuts and cancellations by Trump's Department of Energy to clean technology and manufacturing projects across the country. The first is a white paper that I will summarize briefly. You can find a link in the chat. And the second is a data dashboard that our Vice President of Research, Roxanne Johnson, will present shortly. But first, let me give you a little bit of background. In 2021 and 22, landmark legislation passed by the 117th Congress, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the CHIPS and Science Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act positioned the United States to lead in next generation clean technologies. These laws sparked over $1 trillion in private investment and created hundreds of thousands of good paying jobs in manufacturing and construction. These weren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. They were projects designed to strengthen American manufacturing, accelerate innovation, and deliver concrete benefits to workers and communities across the country. All of that progress, all of those benefits have been under sustained attack over the last year. The so-called and misnamed One Big Beautiful Bill, passed by Congress and signed into law by President Trump last July, repealed nearly $550 billion, that's over $500 billion, in clean energy and manufacturing investments, and use that funding to pay for tax cuts that will disproportionately flow to the wealthiest Americans. In parallel, last year, the Department of Energy canceled congressionally appropriated and already awarded funding for hundreds of manufacturing, innovation, and pollution-reducing projects worth over $11 billion and has threatened to cancel more. Perhaps most outrageously, in October, DOE announced a slew of cancellations targeted at projects in states that shared one single characteristic. Their voters did not vote for Donald Trump in 2024. Just 2 days ago, a federal judge ordered DOE to restore funding to a number of grantees that had filed a lawsuit in federal court, ruling that DOE had violated protections under our Constitution's Fifth Amendment, which guarantee that all people in all states have equal protection under the law, regardless of who they vote for. Our new white paper explains why canceling projects for political or ideological reasons unrelated to their merit doesn't just halt funding, it kills jobs, undermines U.S. competitiveness, and erodes trust in public-private partnerships. 18 of the canceled projects came from the Industrial Demonstration Program, which supports the deployment of cutting-edge technologies by U.S. manufacturers. Research shows those cuts alone will eliminate 25,000 jobs and wipe out $4.5 billion in economic output. We'll hear a little bit more about some of those projects from our other speakers. Meanwhile, global competitors like China are racing ahead, cementing their control of manufacturing supply chains for batteries, solar panels, electric vehicles, and other industrial technologies of the future. Under the Biden administration, DOE had grown into a cornerstone of U.S. industrial strategy to confront China's market dominance, and we had started to reshore those supply chains. Trump's DOE has turned that strategy on its head. Moreover, DOE's cost share model depends on trust in federal commitments and federal contracts. Now firms will seek stable policy environments abroad, taking jobs and supply chains with them. And as recent history has shown us painfully, once industries and supply chains move overseas, they are extremely difficult and costly to bring back. The conclusion is clear, we believe. Congress must change course and defend its constitutional authority over the power of the purse, restore funding for canceled projects, and recommit to a long-term industrial strategy. And DOE should change course and partner with industry and their unions to keep America in the driver's seat in the clean energy economy, because anything less risks locking the United States into dependence on foreign competitors and threatens the livelihoods of manufacturing workers in this country. We'll be happy to take questions about the white paper, the data dashboard, and what is at stake at the end of this call. As Abby mentioned, you can write in your questions as folks are talking, and we'll start collecting them. But now it is my great pleasure to introduce Representative Marcy Kaptur. Representative Kaptur represents Ohio's 9th District and serves as the ranking member of the House Appropriations Subcommittee on Energy and Water Development. Congresswoman.
Jason, thank you so very much. It is a privilege to appear with you and with all of our very important guests. And I want to thank the Blue-Green Alliance for organizing this important event that we can talk to one another and share information. And I'm grateful that we're joined by Roy Hausman, the Legislative Director and Special Assistant to the United States Steelworkers, as well as United Auto Workers to-be President Dave Green. I know how deeply they feel the issues we're going to be discussing today and how those they represent are dependent on our doing what's right for the country. Let me just begin by saying that I am on the Energy Appropriations Committee, and in good times hold the gavel. We're waiting for that day very soon. But household electricity prices have increased by 13%. And they're going up even more since last year when the president took office in January, and they're expected to continue rising this year. Some people that I represent and many other people around the state of Ohio have even seen their energy rates double. With that, their water rates are going up, especially where the data centers have landed and are either considering construction or building already. This is a major cost on every household, and it is one that has people literally up in arms. The Trump administration has announced the termination of over $11 billion, $11 billion in Department of Energy projects across our country. And this includes over $100 million of cancellations for manufacturing companies in the district that I represent alone. This is a lot of money. These awards were authorized by Congress, and the funds were appropriated. So every step of the way, from authorization to appropriation, this was all done the proper way. Then the Department of Energy took those funds and approved them. They announced them, and they signed contracts with the recipients. But under the Trump administration, those contracts have now just been revoked. This should be in every court we can get it into. These project terminations are a matter of real consequence for hardworking American families across our nation, for our global competitiveness, and for the communities that I represent across Northern Ohio. These delays and cancellations hand our technological edge and leadership in the clean global arena over to Communist China. And while we dawdle, delay, and basically cancel or stall projects, China continues to build advanced manufacturing facilities, scale up energy storage production, and dominate the solar panel exports. That is so backwards. In May, the Department of Energy first announced the termination of over $3 billion in projects. They were ready before they even got into office. And 3 of these projects were for companies with roots in Ohio's 9th District, the one that I represent. Importantly, for Libby Glass, Toledo, Ohio's foundational company, $45 million was revoked. It was to be used to purchase new electric furnaces to make them much more competitive with their French, Chinese, and Mexican competitors. Those dollars for the moment are gone. Then $57 million for Owens Illinois Glass, $170 million for Kraft Heinz across 10 of its locations, of which $16,250,000 was withdrawn from a Kraft Heinz facility in Sandusky County. So let's talk about Libby Glass for a second. It's really the heart of our community. This historic company holds deep roots in our hometown, long known as our nation's glass city. The firm has been working for decades to maintain competitiveness in the fierce international glass industry while reducing its environmental footprint and vast energy costs. Federal energy awards were approved by Congress, as I've mentioned, and the U.S. Department of Energy. And this particular amount of money went to Libby to transform very old furnaces. And I can't remember how old they were, but I can guarantee you they're over 50 years old. So this wasn't just an upgrade. This was new industrial manufacturing in America's heartland and our investment in the future of this company. And that company at the moment has been on strike. One union that is a part of Libby Glass settled, the other one has not. So let's be clear, these investments were going to secure good paying union jobs that would have strengthened Ohio as a hub for advanced industry, as well as secure our national energy independence. And now as we talk, steel workers in Toledo at Libby Glass still remain on a months-long strike. The Trump administration's decision to cancel this progress really hurt our region, and it stalls the very manufacturing growth we need to drive down costs for America's families. From the Owens Illinois Glass in Perrysburg and Zanesville to Kraft Heinz in Fremont and Libby Glass in North Toledo, these manufacturing companies were ready to lead in efficiency and production, and cutting this support pushes backward our workers and our global industrial edge. We even have accounts now at the Department of Defense to help America restore its defense industrial base. You can't do that without the companies. And we have a remaining challenge there, a big one. In October, Russell Vought, the head of the budget office for the president and the Department of Energy, announced the termination of $8 billion of Department of Energy projects targeted at blue states. Based on leaked documents, the Department of Energy is looking to terminate a total of $24 billion of such projects that are required by law to invest in America. We're talking a lot of money. This impacts both Democratic and Republican districts. These are projects throughout our country that would have reduced energy costs and secured more than 300,000 jobs in manufacturing in our country. In 2025, America lost over 68,000 manufacturing jobs. And layoffs are ticking up in manufacturing plants such as I represent that David Green can tell us more about. By canceling these projects, the Trump administration is cutting the legs out from under our workers, and this decision just doesn't eliminate jobs. It blocks our legacy industries from adopting technology they need to stay competitive in a fierce global environment. And I'm going to deflect here. When NAFTA was first passed back in the 1990s, and we saw our companies just evaporate and go overseas, the two industries on a very close vote that actually the votes were bought, okay, one was the hog industry. And though that is not the purpose of this dialogue today, it's important for you to know North Carolina in particular, they changed their votes and supported NAFTA. Today, the hog processing industry is owned by Smithfields, which is owned by China. The rest of the votes that switched and voted for NAFTA were from Florida, the tomato industry. And shortly after the passage of NAFTA, those companies all went bankrupt. So there's a head bone connected to the neck bone. These things go in sequence. So we are surrendering our global lead in cleaner energy technologies instead of building the future right here in our homeland with an all-of-the-above energy strategy. I stand by your side with the steelworkers, the United Auto Workers, on the line across northwestern Ohio and our whole country from coast to coast, as I always have, in our fight for better wages, for safe working conditions, for health benefits, and a guaranteed retirement. And I campaign on the slogan, what America makes and grows America. And quite frankly, at the moment, we're not winning that battle. These hardworking men and women deserve nothing less than that. They devote their lives to growing our economy. So I thank you very, very much, and I look forward to the discussion and to hearings from the United Auto Workers and the United Steelworkers, for whom I have such deep respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman, for those comments and for that impromptu history lesson about NAFTA. Roy, over to you.
Okay, thanks. Hi, my name is Roy Hausman, Legislative Director and Assistant President over here at United Steelworkers, and really appreciate the chance, and a founding partner of the Blue Green Alliance. Really appreciate the chance to speak a little bit today, and thank you, Representative Kaptur, for your strong support of Local 700, 5965 over at Libby Glass. I know that's been extremely difficult over there, and all your work there has been really appreciated. Look, last year, the DOE rescinded billions of funding for projects across the country that were previously awarded to modernize U.S. manufacturing and reduce emissions. And it's just overnight, they canceled dozens of these projects, and they left a lot of workers and communities and businesses in turmoil. These projects weren't just about technology, okay? They were about people. The Inflation Reduction Act, which was passed in 2022, the union supported it. Other unions, also a number of other unions, also recognized that these investments would create jobs and strengthen U.S. competitiveness. That was the goal. When you look at by late of 2024, the Inflation Reduction Act had already helped create around 150,000 jobs. There was projections of about 13.7 million jobs being created and maintained, and about $1.9 trillion in economic growth. These cuts that we're seeing now, it's undermining this progress. And so the DOE, during the previous administration, we worked carefully on selecting with them, and they worked very hard at selecting grant recipients based on the potential to build manufacturing capacity, enhance American global competitiveness, and support these family-sustaining jobs, right? Recognizing all of this, we partnered there. We were working hand in hand as close as we could, and is legally responsible with many of the companies to help support project applications and move this process forward. But unfortunately, when we start to see some of these project cancellations, we're seeing this impact on USW members. Representative Capter highlighted the concerns related to Libby class, but I also want to highlight Heidelberg Materials in Mitchell, Indiana, which was they were set to receive up to $500 million for cement plant modernization and carbon capture technology. The reversal here halted engineering progress, wiped out about 1,000 construction jobs. And previously there was a ceremony to announce the announcement, do the investment. We were we were there, and it was one of the largest allocations of IRA funding. And then I also think about U.S. Pipe in Bessemer, Alabama. They had secured 75 million, a little over 75 million, to install an electric induction furnace, melting furnace. This would have boosted capacity and sustainability at that facility, improving that efficiency. And in a community where nearly 1/3 of the residents live in poverty, this is this is us making sure that this plant is there for the long term. Unfortunately, now that opportunity is gone. So, workers and union leaders, look, we've been calling this a shock to the system. Communities that were counting on these investments now face uncertainty. And as one leader put it, the cuts pulled the rug out from under workers in areas already struggling economically. So despite talking about rebuilding U.S. manufacturing, the current administration just seems to be showing contempt for a number of these working people. And it's really frustrating for union leaders who believe that these cuts are devastating and reckless. So, it's just not about canceling projects. This is about our industrial future, what we invest and how we invest. So pulling funds that stall modernization weakens our global standing. They jeopardizes our clean energy transition and also sends a troubling signal about the reliability of federal commitments. So we've got to work on this, and I think about Local 2140, President Ron Woods from USW. He said this administration is screwing over the United States, and that's like look, this is a working person who's just going to shift every day, and he's seeing this day in, day out, where he knows that when we invest in American companies, we have an opportunity to ensure U.S. workers, get the pay and benefits and can clock in, clock out safely every day. And these cuts just don't help. So, but I'll just give you a shorthand on where USW is on this, and really want to thank BGA for the work you guys are doing here.
Thank you, Roy. David, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jason, and thank you, Marcy, Roy, for your input on this, Abby, BGA for putting it together. So good afternoon. My name is David Green. I'm Director of UAW Region 2B, which represents Ohio and Indiana. I represent about 180,000 active and retired members across both states. A little bit about me. I started at GM in 1989 and served in a bunch of local union roles there for, over 36 years. I've been a member. I was the president of Local 1714, Local 1112 in that Lordstown area before it closed. And I've seen firsthand through just my experiences of going through a closed facility what this does, not only to our workers, but to the communities and how they're impacted by disinvestment in manufacturing. The ripple effect in the communities like Ohio and Indiana is extremely impactful. And so when the Department of Energy announced this year that they were going to cut federal funding for hundreds of manufacturing facilities, I was obviously concerned, mainly for those workers and obviously for their communities. In Indiana Transmission, which is in Kokomo, located in my region, is one of the facilities DOE threatened to pull funding from. Stellantis has promised to continue investing in Kokomo, Indiana, whether or not that funding is pulled by the government. As a union, we intend to hold accountable Stellantis for that promise. But look, when the federal government pulls the rug out from under companies like Stellantis, we've seen this all too often. Those companies, and they pull the rug out from the workers. This is extremely, again, impactful to our communities. That's why this administration's GOP Congress cutting funding to manufacturing and production initiatives and incentives that have encouraged automakers to build technologies right here in the US, right? Some of those incentives were specifically designed to help manufacturers retool, revive aging facilities, and keep manufacturing in communities that need to stay afloat. Look, we've seen, there were more than 410,000 workers currently before the cuts building clean energy vehicles and components right here in this country. In recent months with these cuts, we've seen a number of those workers laid off, including over 1,000 employees right across the state line here at GM's Factory Zero, another 1,000 plus employees at Ultium Cells from my hometown in Lordstown, Ohio. Right. And so, like, for me, given my personal history with Lordstown, it was really a moment of hope when Ultium came to the Mahoning Valley. It was even more exhilarating when the workers of that plant fought to get a voice at the workplace, right? They wanted to join a union. They wanted to be at the table. They came to the UAW, and they're now part of our family there. And today, right, those same workers are bearing the brunt of short-sighted corporate and political wavering. It's just infuriating for me, right, to see that happen. These automakers and battery manufacturers have invested billions of dollars to retool factories and build new facilities in the Midwest. They've been doing this for a few years, but the government has backtracked on that funding, regulations, and tax breaks. And when this happens, companies change their priorities, right? Just last month, Ford announced that, they're going to be taking like a $19.5 billion hit to cover their change in corporate strategy on electric vehicles based on the funding cuts. GM, same thing, is taking close to $7 billion hit here, folks. So, the companies like Ford, GM, Stellantis, they absolutely can and should continue to invest in their workers, regardless of who's in the White House. But unfortunately, and all too often, we've seen that unnecessary instability for companies creates uncertainty, unnecessary instability for workers. Turning away from investment wastes money. That in many cases was already spent. It also wastes an opportunity to modernize the automotive industry. And let me add that how important that is, right? What an opportunity. It should not be taken lightly. This is a very competitive global auto market we're in. We need every advantage we can for the companies, for the workers in our communities. And the UAW will always support the policies that prioritize safe, good union jobs, ahead of those that focus only on short-term corporate profits. Investments into manufacturing here in the U.S., whether it's vehicles or other products, is a win for all of us. I'll be happy to take some questions when this is over. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, David, for that perspective on the industry and that shop floor viewpoint. Roxanne, we're going to go over to you.
Great. Hi, everybody. My name is Roxanne Johnson. I'm the Vice President of Research here at BGA. BGA Research equips partners and allies with robust data and analysis to support our shared work towards a clean, prosperous, and equitable economy. As we just heard from our speakers, these DOE award cancellations threaten jobs and competitiveness and erode trust between the private sector and the U.S. government. And they're reversing the real results we were seeing in terms of jobs and economic growth in communities around the country. We've built a database to investigate the local impacts of these canceled and at-risk DOE awards. You can access the dashboard tool at bluegreenalliance.org/impact tracker. The link will be dropped in the chat. We aggregate data sources from a variety of valuable partners. Our work in this space is unique in 3 important ways. First, we've connected award information with geographic locations. Second, we've incorporated details about community benefits plans, or CBPs. These plans set the baseline for job quality, community engagement, equity, and other important aspects of the projects. Third, in BGA materials we develop using this tool, we work to ground truth the data and provide additional context for awards and locations, like you see in the white paper case studies. This is meant to be a living resource for people to use to educate themselves and their local leaders about the impacts these rollbacks are having on workers and communities. Today, I'm going to do a really quick demo of how to use the tool. If you want a more comprehensive overview, we will be uploading a detailed instructional video to our website. So I'm going to share my screen and do the demo of the tool. All right. So the tool is set up like a website, and these tabs across here are different pages that allow you to navigate different ways to access the information in the database. Some of the pages allow you to filter and sort data, open more detailed information about individual awards and locations, and provide feedback or information to us about the data that we have. The About page provides an overview of the tool and details on scope, data sources, and data limitations. The By the Numbers page provides aggregate statistics on awards that are confirmed to have been canceled, as well as those that appeared on the list of rumored cuts leaked October 7th of last year, which we label at-risk awards. The Map page shows locations associated with the awards. Project sites are green, administrative offices are blue, and sites that are both appear in teal. So here we can also look for specific projects. Let's look for the Heidelberg Cement project that Roy mentioned. We'll use the search function up here and we'll type in Heidelberg. Here we can see that that's this site. Because it's green, we can tell it's a project site. We can also tell that this specific site has at least 2 awards. It's got that canceled one that Roy talked about, as well as a smaller at-risk award. And we can see that at least one of its awards has a community benefits plan attached to it. To find more details about that community benefits plan, we can go to the page that has all of the information about the awards, the table. So we'll click the table. And then we'll scroll down to open a larger version so it's easier to navigate. And we'll again use the search to type in Heidelberg. Here we see those 2 awards that appeared when we looked at the record on the map. We're going to scroll over to the community benefits column, which you can see by these headers up here, community benefits plans and summaries. That smaller award that's still at risk does not have a public community benefits summary, but that larger one that was canceled does. So we can click this link and it will take us to a public resource that tells us about all the great things that this project was going to do, but no longer will because it got canceled. Say we wanted to know more about other community benefits plans associated with the awards. We could go to the map, which has a filter that allows us to see only the projects that have community benefits plans. We can go here to this filter and turn it on. And then again, we can click open any of these projects to see details about their community benefits plans. We also have a page for community benefits that provides some aggregate statistics. And here we can see that 76% of the money obligated in these investments is or was tied to clear and meaningful agreements between companies and communities. Canceled awards will no longer generate these benefits, and the outcome remains to be seen for the at-risk awards. That's it for the really brief demo. I didn't go through everything, but again, we will have a video on our website where you'll be able to learn more about how to navigate all of the parts of the tool. And as a reminder, we plan to continue updating and improving the tool, so make sure you're signed up for our email list or following us on social media to get notified when we launch updates. Now I'll hand it back to Jason for Q&A.
Thanks, Roxanne. So to summarize, we've got 2 tools in the chat. One links to a white paper that we've written, and then the other to the tracker that Roxanne just walked us through. We now have time for some questions. I will repeat Abby's instructions. Go into the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen and type in your question if you've got one. I'll read a question that we have and invite any of our speakers to answer it. This is from Bridge Rouch. Are the spiking energy prices that are due in large part to the explosion of the data center sector over the last couple of years affecting existing industries, especially older plants? I am wondering if any of our speakers would like to field that.
I can say something about that to begin with. It's my understanding that three of the most impacted states in terms of data centers are Virginia, Ohio, and I think Illinois is the other one in the top three. I may be incorrect about Illinois, but there are citizen-led movements like you haven't seen since the Vietnam War in communities. And the sad part about this fight, whatever your opinion is on AI and these centers, is that the local people are being run roughshod over. Many times, if the facility is slated for a rural area, a township trustee will be chairing a meeting. Township trustees have no staff. They don't go down to the state capitol and see what they've done down there to expedite these AI centers. And the public is at a very high level of frustration. They're very worried about water bills. Water bills are going up as well. Obviously, I represent a Great Lakes region, and people are concerned about water quality, about the price of water, which is also going up. And polls are showing that these two issues of rising costs for energy and water have now reached such an important point. It's registering on polling when people are asked what's really troubling you with affordability of anything. That is really cropping up. So in Ohio, Intel was relocated from Singapore. One of the problems with where it is they don't have enough energy and water down there. And so what's happening around Ohio is off-site facilities are being built and power purchase agreements are being signed to wheel power from one area to another. Well, the people who may be on the receiving end are happier, I don't know, but I'll tell you what, on the giving end, they're not happy at all. I'm looking for a way to embrace the issue. I don't want to override any township trustee or any mayor or any, but this is a real challenge in our area. And one of the other complicating features of it is that in order to move power, you have to put something up on the grid. In our particular region in Northern Ohio, the grid is really old. And the people that own these companies that are based in California and other places, they're not present there to answer questions. So the public is very, very frustrated.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, to add to
Roy, do you want to add anything?
Representative Capter's thoughts here, I would say, many of the union, United Steelworkers is a broad-based union, represents workers in a host of heavy industries. So these are energy-intensive, trade-exposed industries. And so when you had, under the IRA, you had a significant dollar volume going to improve industrial energy efficiency, which had a twofold purpose, right? It was to not just reduce carbon emissions, but also improve the overall net efficiency of manufacturing facilities. And so, when you have industries like the steel industry, which is known to produce somewhere around 10% of global CO2 emissions, but they're also these mills, they need investment and they're capital intensive. And so when you have that trade exposure as well, it creates a lot of difficulty for private industry here to reinvest. And so the IRA funding that we've been discussing and highlighting when it's pulled back, it undermines both the possibility of future technology development here domestically, but it then presses down on these existing industries where they're doing everything they can to keep the doors open and keep running. And the support to improve energy efficiency and industrial efficiency requires, that extra support, particularly in these trade exposed industries where, um, you know, uh, for every for the dollar of support U.S. government can provide, the People's Republic of China and many other countries offer $3, $5, $10 in support. And so, that was one of the neat things about the IRA, I think, on a whole, was it was supposed to be targeted and using taxpayers' dollars to the maximum efficiency possible to improve, reduce, energy emissions, but also improve energy efficiency.
Thank you for adding that, Roy. I want to turn to our next question from Dave. Did you want to
I
hit
do.
on?
I'm sorry, Jason. I just want to touch a little bit on that because as we talk about energy costs, data centers, I don't know if a lot of folks recognize the importance of energy storage, which is created by lithium ion battery manufacturing in these battery plants we represent: Kokomo, Indiana, Lordstown, Ohio, the Blue Oval in Kentucky, and they're switching their technology. So when these investments dried up to help support energy storage, there was an attack on electric vehicles, but this energy storage is important for more than electric vehicles. So cutting that funding has been really impactful and will also help increase costs moving forward. Thank you.
I'm glad you added that, David. Thanks for saying that. All right, I want to move to a question from Laura, and I'll direct it to Roxanne, my colleague. How often do you anticipate the database being updated, Roxanne?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have at least 2 planned updates coming this year for some improved functionality and more data, but we're hoping to hit more than that. It kind of depends on what we see happening and what advocates on the ground need for our efforts that we're working on together. So stay tuned for more details, but at least 2 for this year.
Thanks, Roxanne. We are almost at time. Any final questions for our speakers? Is there here's a final question. Let's try to answer it quickly. Is there any effort to track job loss on EVs not tied to government grants? Dave mentioned the Ultium plant, but I don't see it in the database. I don't believe it's tied to these federal grants. Roxanne, do you want to start on the database part, and then Dave, if you want to add?
Yeah, one of the updates that we're planning to do will be a broader scope than just these DOE awards. Some of the data we collected for IRA defense last year before the One Big Beautiful Bill Act passed included information relevant to some of the tax credits. And so that information is likely to show up in one of our coming updates. We also partner with other folks who are tracking that kind of information, like Atlas Public Policy. They worked with us on our EV Jobs Hub that may capture some of that information. So I think there are efforts out there looking at broader EV job loss beyond awards, but they're not specifically a target of this set of materials.
David, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, just, the 45, a lot of people hear about the tax credits and they think about with the EVs and how this has impacted the market, the $7,500 tax credit that if you go purchase a vehicle. What has really impacted, I know the facilities and our members specifically, is the 45X money, which was, for every kilowatt hour of energy storage they produced, they would receive a credit, the companies would. So that going away has put a huge impact on just the battery storage. But we also are going to be losing jobs as these facilities at big 3 automakers were transitioning to EV vehicle production. They're now trying to switch back really fast, and I don't know that we have compiled exactly how many jobs have been lost, but I will have our national department to start to focus on some of that information and hopefully share it with BGA. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Okay, we are at time. I want to thank our fabulous speakers, Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur, Roy Hausman of the Steelworkers, David Green of the United Auto Workers, my colleague Roxanne Johnson. I want to thank all of you for joining us today and inhaling a lot of information being thrown at you. And thanks for all the work that you do every day, all of you.